Hello friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Let's start our video with a story about another crazy customer who came to return a product. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Old lady came in wanting a refund for a TV. This one's from years ago, but will forever stand out to me as the most ridiculous experience I've ever had in retail. I worked for a big wholesale retail company that's membership-based for a combined 4 years. My last year in the company, I worked in the electronics section, primarily selling cell phones, but occasionally I'd need to cover the sales floor and advise on television/other sales as needed. One day, an elderly woman came in with her husband. Her TV just broke, and she was looking for a new one. The member explained that her old TV had screen issues, but she liked it because it was easy for her to connect an HDMI to it and watch her Eastern European news channel on the screen itself. I'm like, that's cool. You can get a Vizio that has built-in Chromecast capacity so you can mirror/cast things from your phone to the screen. We spent like 2 hours discussing her options. The woman's husband was disabled and she was elderly, so I told her to buy online and have it delivered to her house or to purchase the straight-to-home delivery service. She did, and that was that. A week later, this woman comes in a complete rampage. She explained she can't get the TV set up, that I lied to her about what it could do, while also explaining she hadn't actually plugged it in, and that she wanted her money back. Problem is, she didn't have the TV with her, so she wanted a refund on a TV she didn't even come in with. My manager explained to her that she needed to bring it in and that she'd get fired refunding a product that isn't in the store. The lady scoffed and said, "Well, I'd risk it if I were you because I'm upset." My manager, trying to level with her, was all, "I have kids to feed. I'm not getting fired over your TV." And the woman replied, "We all have kids to feed." The lady called me a bee for selling her the wrong TV for her needs, but also said I was smarter than anyone else in my department because she had come in and asked my other coworkers about TVs, and they didn't know what to tell her. My 3 other male coworkers were not normally very helpful. Meanwhile, her husband was in the parking lot playing with the birds to avoid this drama. And our second story. I said I didn't have time for that. We'll turn to one of the great banes of every trucker's existence, the Federal Hours of Service regulations. The HOS rules are so Byzantine and impenetrable that they might as well have been crafted by Anthemius. A full explanation would need animated diagrams and preferably narration by John McLeish. But the ELI 5 explanation is that all freight drivers have to keep track of 4 clocks. Drive clock, 11 hours, only counts down while behind the wheel, resets after a 10-hour break. Duty clock, 14 hours, counts down when you first go on duty and doesn't stop or reset until you complete a 10-hour break. Break clock, 8 hours, counts down when you first go on duty and doesn't stop or reset until you complete a half-hour break. Weekly clock, 70 hours, a sum of all time driving or on duty for the past 8 days or since your last 34-hour break. Can also be 60 hours or 7 days. If any of those clocks run out, you can no longer drive until you take the appropriate break. Of course, these are only the rules until they aren't, and the regulations have more loopholes than Himeji Castle. For instance, I'm considered a short-haul driver, which means that in exchange for a number of restrictions on how and where I drive, I don't have to keep my own time log or keep track of my drive clock unless I work more than 12 hours, in which case I do. I'm still limited by the 14-hour duty clock, though once per week I can extend that to 16 hours. Still, company policy is not to load drivers after they hit 12 hours. It's safest that way. That brings us to Gary, my dispatcher. My old dispatcher, Jack, had been dumped on scheduling for playing games with how he dispatched drivers. Gary apparently never got the memo. I've met dispatchers who were former drivers. They tend to have a solid idea of the realities of driving. Gary was not one of those dispatchers. Gary saw the world through his tracking map, which didn't bother with inconsequential things like traffic or elevations. Trucks were just blips on his board, and he seemed to delight in moving those blips around. Gary thought of himself as a prankster and a wit. If he'd known the word, he might have described himself as puckish. If his drivers had known the word, they would have thought it was one letter off. And that's how I ended up in Corona, California at 1 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. I call Gary and tell him that I'm at 11 and a half hours and need to start heading back. Gary needs me to take another load. Their local plant is closed and I'm the only driver available at a neighboring plant. I pull under, figuring that this is going to be somewhere in Riverside, maybe San Bernardino or Moreno Valley, somewhere vaguely in the direction I'm going. That'll let me get my grumble on, without actually delaying me too much. It's in Tustin. Tustin is not on my way home. It's in the opposite direction, on the other side of a way station. And of course, I'm at a plant with no scale, because trying to send loaded trucks through the Santa Ana Canyon is the kind of employee management you'd normally expect only in Dickens' most unhinged laudanum dreams. Still, dispatch wants me to go. I call my manager Bob before I leave to let him know what just happened and that someone's going to have to collect the truck and me after this job. I'm certainly not going to brave the scale goblins without being able to check my load, so it's time to partake in the time-honored trucker pastime of dodging the way station. I have to go 20 miles out of route and drive through the Orange Crush, which is as much fun on a Friday afternoon as it sounds, to reach the job. For those who live in the area, it meant taking the 71 to the 60, then coming back down the 57. The job itself goes off without a hitch, but now it's after 3 p.m. I have half an hour before I can no longer legally drive, and I'm on the wrong side of the Santa Ana Canyon, which at this hour is moving at about the same speed as my aunt on her rascal. I call Gary to let him know that I won't be making it back to my home plant, and he sounds a little cowed. It turns out Bob called the regional manager, and the regional manager called the operations manager. The operations manager called Gary. From what I gather, he called him many things. Gary asks, practically pleading, if I can make it back by 16 hours. I can't, not through the traffic I'm facing, but that's a moot point. With malicious cheerfulness, I reminded him that I blew my 16-hour exception on Tuesday when he decided to send me on a late afternoon run up to Joshua Tree. I've got just enough time to get my truck someplace safe and park it. When they figure out how to get me back, they'll find me at the Crab Cooker just off the 55 freeway in Tustin. There had been several night pours the previous night, and that's why I'd started at 1:30 a.m. As a result, they don't have anyone with the hours to make the round trip out to Tustin and back, not during rush hour. In the end, they find a rock hauler who had a tanker endorsement on his license. Mixers need a Class B license with tankers. Rock trucks need Class A with doubles and triples. Coming on for night shift, Bob offers to drive him out and bring me back. By the time I clocked out, I'm over 18 hours for the day. Bob got overtime for the trip out and back and told me to just stay home Saturday. Last I heard, Gary'd been moved from dispatch to IT. And our last story. Sapphires aren't a Karen's best friend. Not my story, but my cousin's. Let's call him Dave. So Dave, 34-year-old male, was dating a Karen for a really long time, like 4 years. And earlier this year, he finally proposed. Now, Karen was a bit of a gold digger and a very entitled person. She was a bit of white trailer trash, but fancied herself a rich lady. She was very vocal to all the other women in the family about how she wanted a traditional diamond ring and how she'd like Dave to follow the tradition of getting her an engagement ring worth 3 months' salary. Now, Dave isn't super rich, but he does have a stable factory job, and around here, that's basically upper class, and his 3 month salary would be between $3,000 and $6,000 depending on overtime. Needless to say, Dave did not want to spend that on a ring given the global situation and the fact that he could be laid off at any time. He'd been doing the ring shopping at the beginning of the year and thankfully wasn't laid off, so Dave decided to look into alternatives and found white sapphires. For those of you who don't know, white sapphires are a fantastic alternative to diamonds. They can be grown so they're not gotten with slave labor, aren't artificially inflated in price, and to someone who isn't a jeweler, they look exactly like any diamond. So Dave was able to buy the size stone that Karen wanted with the fancy setting, gold band, the works, for a fraction of the cost if it had been a diamond. He proposed and told her it was a diamond and that he'd saved for a year. A bit of a jerk move, but it was probably him being petty. He jokingly told me it was probably his way of getting revenge for her being such a Karen. However, it doesn't end there. As you can imagine, once the wedding planning started, it didn't go well. Karen was an entitled witch and didn't understand why a global pandemic was cause enough to hinder her having her perfect day. It all came to a head one day when she and Dave had a fight over the guest list. The dream venue she chose didn't allow for as many people as they needed, like 300. Hey, both have big families. And Karen sent out invitations / save the dates without Dave's knowledge. except she only invited her side of the family. No one on Dave's side got an invite, not even the in-laws. Dave called off the wedding and kicked her out of his apartment in his name. Karen kept the ring out of spite, something Dave didn't really care about. It didn't hold any value to him, and he was more worried about the wedding he was having to cancel and the texts he was getting from Karen's side. It took a few months, but they all calmed down, and he didn't hear from her until last month. Turns out she tried to pawn the ring to a pawn shop in town known for its jewelry because the owners were in the jewelry business before they switched to pawning. She was convinced she'd get a few thousand for it since she still believed it was a diamond. The pawn shop offered her a couple hundred because it was a sapphire, and the owner actually liked it. She called Dave several times and sent a billion texts. He never answered or picked up, demanding that he pay her in cash what the ring was worth, threatening to sue for the lie he told her, etc. He and I had a good laugh listening to her tantrum. I guess diamonds might be a girl's best friend, but sapphires are definitely for Karens. Dave's clearly a smart man. I hope his next partner loves him so much that an onion ring would suffice. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.